return mission. So what we can see over here is the stacked spacecraft. My role on Mars 2020 is assembly, test, and launch operations, which is ATLO, where all of the delivered components of hardware come together and make the spacecraft. In the southwest corner over here, we have our flight Mars 2020 rover, and we have the entire mobility team installing the rocket bogie mobility system. We try to test all of our hardware to the environments that we would see for launch of the vehicle, for cruise, the journey from Earth to Mars, for the entry into the Mars atmosphere, for landing, as well as the surface of Mars. Every once in a while we come up and take a quick look. With all the craziness, you kind of lose sight of it a little bit. Over the years, it becomes like your non-living child. So you really want to see it do well and perform the best that it can. It reminds you that, hey, everything that you're touching, all this hard work that you're putting in the long hours, if it was easy, everyone would be doing it. We're sending hardware that we built on Earth to another planet to go and do science.
I'm Marina Jurica with NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory. JPL is where the Mars 2020 mission and the Perseverance rover are managed here in Southern California. Getting to Mars is a test of perseverance in itself. It takes thousands of people working together to make this mission a success. Today, we are with one of the many faces behind the spacecraft. As the Mars 2020 mission's Aeroshell vehicle lead, Michelle Tomey Colizzi was very busy in Cape Canaveral, Florida, making sure that the rover was ready for launch last month on the ATLO, Assembly, Test, and Launch Operations Team. After a successful launch of Perseverance, she joins us live back home in California to answer some questions. If you have any questions, you can leave them right here in the YouTube chat. In light of the times, I'm talking to Michelle in separate locations as we are social distancing. Welcome, Michelle, and welcome back home to California.
Thank you, Marina. It's very great to be back, especially after a successful launch. So now we're just patiently waiting from home, doing work until the landing in February.
Yes, we are all in anxious anticipation for the landing in February. So how did it feel to be out there in Florida a few weeks ago, seeing Perseverance launch?
It was so surreal. I mean, it's a culmination of 5 years of work from just hundreds of engineers and technicians from all over the world. And it was just beautiful weather, perfect day, perfect launch. It was absolutely amazing to see.
And that's so wonderful that it was a morning launch. We all know that Florida afternoons can be very stormy. So Michelle, break down, what does your title, Aeroshell Vehicle Lead, mean?
So the Aeroshell Vehicle Lead is part of the ATLO, the Assembly, Tests, and Launch Operations team. And the spacecraft is actually divided into 5 major components. We have the cruise stage, we have the aeroshell, which is back shell and heat shield, we have the descent stage, and we also have the rover. So each one of those vehicles, and in my case, 2 of those vehicles, the back shell and heat shield, are managed by an engineer. So I have the aeroshell, and I have 3 peers who do the others. And what we're responsible for is the actual integration of the hardware, the sub-assemblies that get delivered and built by other engineers at JPL and abroad. They deliver them to us, and we're responsible for writing the procedures and doing the actual installation work and testing work of that hardware to build the spacecraft.
And as we talked about before, Michelle, this is a really fast-paced job.
Oh yeah, as people's deliveries push later and later due to unforeseen circumstances, we can't continue to push our launch date any further. We have a few week window that happens every 2 years because of the orbital mechanics have to be just right. The planets literally have to be aligned in a certain way where we have the shortest trajectory and can get the right speeds and the right location to perform our landing at the Jezero Crater. So we work around the clock, sometimes 7 days a week, multiple shifts to make sure that we do the job effectively and efficiently, and so that it will perform as intended to when it does reach Mars.
And Michelle, can you tell us why ATLO, Assembly, Test, and Launch Operations, is so important and critical to the mission's success?
So ATLO is actually the place where the spacecraft comes together as a whole for the first time. So the project duration is, it takes years and years to build and test all of these small components of the spacecraft. So there's various engineers who have their own piece of hardware that they design from scratch. They fabricate, they build, they test. They make sure it meets all of its requirements. Then at that point, once they know that it will perform as it's intended to and meets all of the requirements that they have set for it, they hand it over to ATLO. So we then put all of these little puzzle pieces together to build the rover and build the larger vehicles. And then all those come together in ATLO as well to become the spacecraft.
You really have to put that rover through the ringer. It's a lot about testing and troubleshooting, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. We want to make sure that it performs as best as it can here on Earth. And we catch any slight idiosyncrasies that we may notice here, so we know how to diagnose them if something does arise on its journey to or on Mars. But it's better to catch it and understand it here while we can physically put hands on and do that work, rather than everything being remote through 7-minute transmission signals across space back to Earth.
And you hold your breath in that time, I'm sure.
Absolutely.
Now, the rover was named Perseverance. What does that name mean to you personally?
It actually hits pretty close to home, I think, given the current pandemic and everything that happened to us. There were a lot of sacrifices made by a number of people to make this mission a success. And Perseverance is very resembling of all of the sacrifices that people made, being away from home, having to work from home and set up a home office if they didn't have it before, to relocate their everyday routine to be able to support and make this still happen in the year 2020.
And Michelle, a lot of the ATLO team was away from their family for quite some time.
Yeah, we relocated to Cape Canaveral, Florida. We shipped the spacecraft over, some components as early as December of 2019, with the rover following in February. And we did all of the integration work that we once had done at JPL at Cape Canaveral for the final integration of the spacecraft. And then that's where it gets installed onto the Atlas V rocket and launched from. So it was a long stint away from home, quarantining in a place that isn't your home when we weren't allowed to go into work. So it was definitely an experience, to say the least.
It was truly a test in perseverance, and you guys did an incredible job. And you have quite an incredible history with JPL. What inspired you in your career path that helped get you where you are today?
Yeah, so actually, growing up as a kid, my grandfather and both of his brothers, my aunt and her husband, all were JPLers. My grandfather was actually part of the ATLO team for the very first Mars rover, Mars Pathfinder. And they had just talked so highly of the times of an experience that they had at the Cape, how amazing it is to work for JPL, all the different projects, the discovery missions. I mean, they were part of Cassini, Voyager, Galileo. I mean, the list goes on and on. And as a kid saying, hey, wow, my grandpa touched something that got sent to space and is sitting on another planet right now. Like, that's just so motivating as a child to see that. And it's amazing how now working there, being able to compare stories with my aunt, with my grandfather, actually, before he passed earlier this year, to see how different and yet how similar things are, given the time span of how many years have passed since they sent Pathfinder and we're sending Perseverance. So it's a very cool connection to be able to have that with your family. So it's very inspiring to me as a mechanical engineer and someone who's so deeply involved in STEM.
It's a bond that you'll always be able to share. As he was inspirational to you, now you can inspire countless other people as we move forward. forward. So on that note, we are going to answer some social media questions from all of you folks out there. Thank you so much for tuning in with us today. We've gotten some incredible questions already. Omar on YouTube asks Michelle, what is the most important characteristic of the job?
I think it's dedication and willingness to put 100% effort to, if you don't know the answer, to find the answer. Dedication to do it right, to take pride in your work, to work with others, because it's not one single person can do the job on their own. And you need to be willing to communicate and ask for help if you need it. And having those qualities, being a good people person, being able to interact with others to accomplish a common goal, I think is very key to have a successful product as well as a really healthy work environment, because it's a high stress situation. And the last thing you want to do is have an argument with someone over no reason. Is you want a very collaborative workspace where everyone shares a common goal and is dedicated to get to that goal.
Dedication and hard work. As you mentioned, Michelle, all the hardware comes together and forms the spacecraft for the first time on the ATLO team. So Rye Toy on YouTube asks, where is the rover right now and how long did it take to build it?
So the rover is a few million miles away from Earth as of right now. I think it travels close to 1 million miles a day away from Earth on its 280 million mile journey. Building the rover actually took a number of years, and it all is supposed to come together in ATLO over the course of just a few months, where we have just very stringent documentation, right? We have to solve a lot of small issues or fitment problems that may arise on the floor with the resources we have and the crew we have. Decisions need to be made quickly on the fly because we don't have time to just stop work and take a number of days or weeks to figure out a little tiny issues that can be resolved by the team on the spot. But it definitely does take, it's a culmination of years in developing and building and making sure that we minimize the amount of problems that could potentially occur on the floor when it does get put together.
Yeah, I remember we talked about this, Michelle. It's just so much preparation and research ahead of time so that you are organized when you need to be.
Oh, absolutely. There's no time for error on the floor. You need to make sure that you're prepared as soon as you walk in, because the last thing you want is a standing army of technicians and quality assurance and other engineers who are there to support your job. If you're not prepared as an engineer, that kind of, you take a little hit and people are standing there waiting for you to kind of get it together. So a lot of times when it's such a fast-paced schedule and we're working long hours, we do come home at night and we research and make sure that we absolutely know what is going on the following day's activities, so we can be there on the floor to lead our team to a success that day.
Gian asks, what material is on the cover to survive entry at such high temperatures?
So the Aeroshell is actually made out of various materials. So the heat shield, which is the bottom portion of the capsule, so down here, that's actually made of pica, which is a phenolic impregnated carbon ablator. So what it's intended to do is actually ablate in the atmosphere. It's sacrificial material that the energy to kind of burn and deteriorate that material will be used to do that, rather than to transfer the energy as heat through the material to heat up the rover. On the back of the back shell, it's a SLA material that is a Lockheed material, and it's similar to a cork that is actually very insulative, and they have this white protective paint over it, and that actually does a very significant job of insulating the rover and descent stage that are inside, because it is really important to keep those temperatures as stable as we can when it goes through the coldness of deep space and the heat of entry into the Martian atmosphere.
And similarly related, Michelle, Michael asks, how do you deal with the heat of the MMRTG? How big is the radiator? What considerations have you made?
So there's actually a full heat rejection system for that MMRTG that travels throughout the entire spacecraft components. And what it does is it takes heat away from that and uses a freon to cool it. And through the long lengths of tubing, you kind of dissipate the heat as it goes through. The size is it's more of the protective equipment around it is large. I've never laid eyes specifically on the flight MMRTG. I think very few of us do. It's a heavily, it's a very secure process, but it is the simulators that I have seen. They are quite large. I mean, probably the length of my arm. And there's a multitude of ground support equipment and a very large team of technicians and engineers who do work on that specifically and put that together and make sure that it's a very safe installation, that it rejects the heat appropriately and doesn't heat any of the other surrounding components to unallowable temperatures.
And JF106 asks, do you see future changes to the components, such as the Aeroshell, in terms of materials as we move forward?
The Pika and the SLA have actually been pretty heritage for a number of Mars missions, and they've proven to be successful. So I think we want to continue to fly them until either the Aeroshell size is just too large where it can't do a sufficient job of cooling and we need new technology, or unless something else that's newer and better that we can have some kind of thorough testing to give us confidence that it will exceed our expectations and exceed the performance of what we currently use. But as of right now, if it's not broke, why fix it? We've had multiple mission successes with the materials that we have. And I think we really do rely heavily on that heritage. It gives us confidence going into the mission, and hopefully when this will be another mission to give us additional confidence and a bunch of new data with our Medley 2 sensor suite to show us what the Mars atmosphere entry conditions and stuff are. So we've been getting more and more science and data points from the more missions that we have with this, and it can continue to show us the pitfalls or the successes that our current materials have.
And Michelle, you brought up a really great point. You're going to have some really incredible new cameras, both on the rover and on the shield, that is going to actually show EDL, entry, descent, and landing, in a new light that we've never seen before.
Yeah, absolutely. So Mars 2020 has a suite of EDL, or entry, descent, and landing cameras to show us some really awesome views that we weren't able to see on the Mars Science Lab or the Curiosity mission. So two in particular that I'm really excited about are the descent stage downlook camera and the rover uplook camera. And I'm a little biased because before working as the Aeroshell vehicle lead, I was the cognizant engineer for what's called the bridal umbilical device, or the BUD. And the BUD is one of the big components of the sky crane. That's actually like the winch type mechanism that lowers the rover from the descent stage on these 3 nylon ropes. And then there's an electrical umbilical that connects the two to send signals from the descent stage to the rover before the descent stage goes and flies away. So having footage of the BUD functioning from up above and from down below is going to be totally awesome, because I get to see the hardware I specifically worked on and spent 3 years of my life building and testing, to see it perform on Mars as a never before seen kind of footage.
It's going to be exciting for all of us, Michelle, to see those pictures come back for sure. Massimo asks, which were some of the biggest challenges you and your team faced while working on that rover?
I think more recently, the biggest challenges were, how do we continue to adapt with the coronavirus pandemic? I mean, that was something that was totally unexpected. And none of us have ever been through anything like this before. So management really had to sit down and scratch their heads and say, hey, how do we still make this clean room a safe environment for our engineers and our technicians in QA to come to work every day and still do the job we need to do? So there was a lot of work behind there, and luckily it's a clean room. We're all in protective equipment, full bunny suits. All you can see are my eyes all day, and most of the time we have goggles on. There's large HEPA filters that filter the air almost to hospital quality or even above grade with these filters, because we're very concerned with particulate, and we need to keep the spacecraft as clean as possible when we send it to Mars. There's actually a whole planetary protection team who makes sure we stay in check and we don't dirty the spacecraft with our own germs, pandemic or not. So I think adapting to that, not being able to go work in your office every day, having to go and do anything that's not in the clean room from the comfort of someone else's home in Florida that you're renting, that posed, I think, a really big feat that we needed to overcome, right? We're away from our families. We rely on hanging out with each other, and now we can't even do that. So you really start to kind of feel a little bit lonely, which you want to keep as clear and positive of a head as you can so you can come to work every day and do what you need to do. And we were all able to get through it, and we got through it together. Lots of texting and Mario Kart remotely with each other on the nights that we didn't have work the next day. So we did what we could to try to stay positive, to deal with this pandemic, and keep our heads clear so we could come into work every day in the clean room and do what we needed to do.
And Michelle, you brought up a really good point, just staying positive. And right now, a lot of students are heading back into a virtual classroom, a complete unknown to what they've been used to. And Scott is watching with his whole class right now. And one of his students wants to ask you, what are the possibilities of a successful mission?
So far, everything's been so good. So we are just full speed ahead, hoping for the best. We've done this before with Mars Science Laboratory, and we feel confident in the work that we've done everything we can do to make it a successful mission. So all we can do at this point is sit back and wait and watch and hope for the best.
And a lot of students are watching, so welcome to all of you students out there. LD is asking, Michelle, what would you recommend that a high schooler should do if he wants to work with NASA rovers?
There's a lot of ways to get involved. I mean, we do a lot of STEM outreach to schools. Especially when things are open again. I personally used to go to career fairs. My sister-in-law is a teacher, and I would go and support her career fair every single year to try to encourage people to study STEM. Come take a tour of NASA-JPL or your local NASA center. I'm sure they all do tours that for the public, that are open to the public. Go to events like that. Follow online. Really try your best in math and science. That it goes a very long way and makes life a lot easier. And as you continue to grow, there's a lot of internship opportunities, co-op opportunities that the different NASA centers have to offer that get young students and college students involved to hands-on work on a lot of our projects. I know we do have partners as well with a lot of college institutions for building certain parts or managing certain parts of our projects and missions to space. So there's a lot of different ways that you can get involved. Paying attention to the rocket launches and kind of educating yourself online, reading different publications and articles. I mean, being involved and showing interest and doing your best in school, trying to stay motivated, stay out of trouble, that really goes a long way. And determination is key. If you want something, do whatever it takes to get to that goal.
And Blind ASMR asks, how does it feel to be a woman at the forefront of the scientific community?
To be honest, I mean, I love it. I personally don't feel like I've been discriminated against for being a woman versus a man at JPL. I think they do a fantastic job of recognizing and rewarding people based on merit. And I work my butt off, and my management has seen it. My peers have seen it. I've seen it in my peers. And the harder you work, it gets recognized. And especially if you don't continue to boast and brag and ask about it, but you focused your efforts on the job. Do as best as you possibly can. make friends with your coworkers. Do you want to foster a healthy, productive work environment with those around you, and set an example, and others will follow it. At least in my situation, others have followed. I work in a predominantly male dominated industry, and I actually do have a lot of friends, both male and female, in the industry, and we all just mesh together well. If you don't know something, people aren't quick to call you out on it, but instead they want to help you learn. And I think just fostering that collaborative and healthy work environment with others really goes a long way to make the experience good for you and for others.
At the end of the day, Michelle, it's about getting the job done. That's for sure. Ishan asks, is there anything extra that I can do so that I can work with NASA?
Apply. I mean, just monitor constantly the NASA careers, the JPL, whatever your closest NASA center is. Apply. I mean, internships, work experience helps. Get involved in your community, right? A lot of outreach helps. That looks great on a resume. So build your resume with different experiences of helping people, of tutoring, of working on, like, judging a robotics competition at your local elementary school, getting involved, mentoring people. I mean, a lot of the soft skills like that go a really long way in building an application, right? We have some of the brightest minds, but they're very well-rounded people. So it's not all about being the smartest person in the room. It's about being a smart enough person who can also hold a conversation, who isn't quick to judge people, who works hard, who asks questions if they don't know it, and is willing to do whatever it takes to find the answer, even if they don't know it on their own knowledge. So I think just getting involved and building a good resume with experiences with others. Networking is key. And just keep an eye out and see what jobs are available and apply. There's no penalty in applying. So apply to everything. Do as much as you can there and just get your name out there. And that should definitely help.
Of perseverance, Michelle. Thank you so much for joining us today. You are truly an inspiration.
It's my pleasure. Thank you guys for having me.
The rover is slated to land on the red planet February 18th, 2021. For the latest on the mission, follow at NASA Persevere on Twitter and Facebook. You can watch all of the behind the spacecraft video profiles on the NASA 360 YouTube channel. We will be doing Q&As with mission team members over the coming months, so be sure to subscribe to our NASA-JPL YouTube channel for notifications. If you want to explore the universe from the comfort of your home, check out our NASA at Home activities for families and kids of all ages. You can find them on the nasa.gov homepage. Thank you to everyone for joining us here today, and a big shout out to all the kids out there who are starting school. Good luck in your new school year. Until then, stay safe.